excited to be back to talk some NBA basketball in the summertime, because talking NBA basketball in the summertime is significantly better than playing basketball in the summertime outside,
Oh,
because
especially
it's
down there. Oh my god.
yeah, yeah. I was on vacation and we played with Nicole's cousins and they actually came up to me one time when we were on the beach and they were like, they call me Uncle Justin. I'm not an uncle, but they call me Uncle Justin, and they're like, "Yo, you want to go play basketball around 1 o'clock? It should be the hottest then." And I was like, "Not a selling point. You shouldn't."
Right, yeah, right. Like, wait, that was their strategy to get you to play?
Yeah, that was their selling point. It's gonna be the hottest then, and I'm like, yeah.
Great.
I think they were thinking like it'll be the hottest, so you don't want to be sitting on the beach. You could be up on
So I wanna
hot
go to the
cement.
blacktop and play basketball? Like, what?
Yeah, so it was fine though. It was fun. They just wanted to play basketball,
No, yeah, I get it.
So we did that. We lowered the rim to 8 foot, and I was dunking
Oh,
on
I was
them
saying,
like,
yeah, you're going for posters then, huh?
oh yeah, it was dangerous what I was trying to do. But it is a little sadder of an episode. We're happy to be back, but the biggest really NBA news that's going on right now is that Bill Russell has passed away at
Yeah.
88 years old.
Yeah, and first off, again, thank you everyone for the patience. Full disclosure, and I know I said at the end of last episode that we dropped that there was gonna be a little potential hiatus in the break.
Yeah.
We did not intend for it to be this long. There's been a lot of things going on. Justin obviously was on vacation. I had an episode recorded, then work, my last week of work got into it. We'll talk about, we don't need to talk about me when Bill Russell started first, but I do not live in the state of Florida anymore. I actually am back home in the Philadelphia area. I do miss being able to see Justin in person on a regular basis, but virtual is pretty nice too. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, so Bill Russell has passed away, 88 years old. Family said it was in his in his sleep peacefully. So obviously some great news there. Number 6 retired by the Boston Celtics. Pretty largely uh, he's got an argument for the greatest winner in anything, period. I mean, there's some individual sports. Michael Phelps in particular stands out. Maybe Serena Williams as well, where they've just won everything.
Joey Chestnut.
Justin, come on, don't.
I,
This is
I,
Bill
lit-
Russell
I,
tribute day. We are not going
I,
to entertain Joey Chestnut's eating contest dominance
I'm
with
just
Bill
saying.
Russell right now.
He's
He
got a
was
lot
not.
of W's. How many wins he's got?
I get it, but like, come on. Anyway, Bill Russell, 11-time NBA champion, 1957, 1959 through 1966, won all of them, which is still insane, an NBA record, 8 straight with Celtics. 1968 and 1969, which he was a player coach for,
Which is
champion as a player and a coach.
that's the craziest part to me is like the dude was coaching and playing and still was getting wins. Like,
Well, and making history too, because he was the
yeah.
first black coach in NBA history. So obviously paved a lot of
Well,
roads in that regard.
and
Um,
I watched ESPN was airing a thing this morning before I came into work where, they were honoring him and, he was obviously a big part in pushing that agenda and was one of the first African American players. And they were talking about a lot of things he had to deal with in that, where he couldn't stay at the same hotels that some players were staying at, depending on the state that they were traveling to at that time. So it's it probably was frustrating at times, I would
Well, it was
imagine.
everywhere. It was just
Yeah.
even just on the road. Like, that's the worst part is it was in Boston. I mean, he got his home
Oh,
broken
yeah.
into. He got multiple times, had all sorts of, every insult you could think of
Oh,
hurled at
yeah.
him. But at the same time, I mean, that's part of his greatness, right? Like his activism in the civil rights. And, I mean, he went to Mississippi after Medgar Evans got killed. And,
Yeah.
he was on the front lines in the trenches, like really doing the work off as well. Off the court, he was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom back in 2011, which is the highest civilian honor you can earn in the United States. I think a lot of times, obviously, with athletes, certain athletes are I think we often say that maybe we shouldn't idolize athletes as much as we should in this country. Just in general, like they do at the end of the day, it is a sport, but Bill Russell is absolutely the exception to that, if there is ever one. Just a larger than life figure on the court, off the court. And I mean, I think that can be seen as well in all the just the variety of tributes that are pouring in for him. I mean, it's every generation of the game. The NBA Finals MVP trophy is named after him. I mean, he is the
Hmm.
greatest winner of all time. He never lost a game 7, which is one of the craziest stats ever.
I actually had a stat on that. He played a total of 10 game sevens, was like you said, 10-0. He averaged 18.6 points per game and 32.3 rebounds per game in those 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, like you said, everything. I mean,
And
11-time champion, 5-time MVP, 12-time All Star. He won the All Star Game MVP in '63, 3-time first team, 8-time second team, all defensive first team, 4-time rebounding champion, 2-time champion at NCAA with the University of San Francisco. All sorts of gold medals with Team USA. I mean, that's the thing, is it's like it's not just there's a weird thing with Bill Russell where his stats almost get disrespected. Like, everyone knows that Bill Russell's the greatest winner of all time, right? But because Wilt Chamberlain's stats are so gaudy, and obviously that was the big rivalry back then, and what
Mhm.
we celebrated for so long. Um, but Bill Russell, I mean, there's a very valid argument that he's the greatest defensive player to ever play the game. And it's not like his offensive numbers, like, this isn't a guy who was just catching alley oops. Like, he was quite a great offensive player as well. Like you said, showed up in all these big games. I mean, he just denied so many teams from winning rings. I mean, you talk about how the couple that were able to break through during his tenure, it's like the Hawks only got that one. They were able to break through in '58. They finally got that one because they were knocking on the door for a while. With Wilt only winning one with the Sixers during that time, with Jerry West only getting one with the Lakers, and they were there every single year. Bill Russell, without a doubt, on that front. I mean, in terms of the NBA, nobody would even argue it. I mean, MJ's got 6. Everybody talks about him being 6-0 in the finals, but Bill Russell, just
Well, and
11 it won't likely be done ever again. I mean, I don't think there's a planet where someone wins 11 or one team wins 8 in a row like that. Like, especially if it didn't happen with the Bulls in the '90s.
well, and it's the game's obviously changed a ton since Bill Russell has played, including more teams and stuff like that. And I know that's usually the first angle people go when they're trying to, discredit his wins and all and his stats and all that. But at the end of the day, it's like a winner's a winner, man. And I know people would say, well, would he be able to do that with today's NBA? And today's NBA is a little different, and the playoffs are different. So I mean, probably not, but you can only play with what you're given, and
And
in
I
those
hate that
situations,
argument.
right? But
Like,
in those situations, he was winning. So I hate saying that, like or discrediting it, or saying it doesn't count, or whatever you want to, however somebody wants to bring down his numbers
well, right.
or his greatness.
And I get the comparison. I mean, Draymond Green talked about this on his podcast because
Yeah,
they were
the
debating,
new
the
media.
the new media, the Warriors and the Lakers, specifically Shaq and Kobe's teams,
Yeah,
but then with the Bulls as well. And it's just because if you put those players in the modern era with modern training, with modern medicine, with everything
it's
that NBA
different.
players have now, like, yeah, I do think they would succeed. And vice
It would.
versa in other eras. Like, I think greatness is great in any era. And I think we get lost a lot of times in those comparisons where, we don't need to compare eras. Like, I do think when you rank it, it is a little difficult because that is, I mean, I would
Well,
be lying to you if I said Wilt and Bill Russell are the hardest to place in my top 10. Like, I don't know. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points a game for a season. Bill Russell, like you said, won 11 titles in 13 years. How do you not have them top 10?
right.
But I don't know. Like, when I see the guys now, where it's like with all the just advantages they have with playing in today's era, with the again the just with the travel being different. I mean, guys were flying coach back then. Like, there's an infamous story about the Lakers team plane almost crashed. Like, imagine how
Hmm.
different that would be if Elgin Baylor had died in a plane crash back then, and how much different the NBA would have been if it had even survived. I mean, this is an era when the NBA finals were on tape delay, like if they were
Yeah,
on TV at all, a lot of the time.
yeah.
I mean, more infamously, Wilt's 100-point game. There's no footage of it. There's nothing. There's just that picture that everybody knows and loves. But no, I mean, he was though. He was a pioneer in that regard. I mean, he was a member of the first All Black starting five in the NBA.
Hmm.
Like I said, the first Black coach. Like it just there are so many barriers that Bill Russell broke down and just continued to be like, I love the clip that's going around of everybody with him and with Shaq, and he's with not why am I blanking right now? David Robinson. I kept
Mm.
wanting to say Tim Robinson for some reason. David Robinson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who wrote a long article about him as well. But there's the clip of them all joking around and on stage together celebrating. He was giving out the NBA Finals MVP trophy every year. I mean, the last one he did in person was Kawhi Leonard in 2019. Obviously, the
Yeah.
pandemic, kind of slowed
And he
that
was
down a little
and he
bit.
was
Bill
sick.
Russell, of all people, right,
Yeah.
shouldn't be, risking his health at his age.
Right. And that's
But
why he didn't do this year, or I guess technically last year's with the Warriors and them. He was, sick and couldn't be there. So, that's obviously a bummer, but yeah, to have an entire trophy named after you is pretty legit,
yeah, I mean, just an excellent rebounder, one-on-one defender.
I think he was the
Um,
tallest. I think if I remember correct or read it correctly, he was like one of the tallest in the league for like most of the seasons until Wilt got there, if I have that right. But it definitely in like the top 3 or 4 tallest guys in the league for a while.
yeah, I mean, he made the 75th anniversary team recently. He's actually one of only uh, 4 players total to have made all the anniversary teams, the 25th, the 35th, the
That's cool.
50th, and the 75th. It's him, his teammate, Bob Cousy, George Mikan, and Bob Pettit.
And that's something worth bringing up too. Is his teammates are there are a lot of big names on that team with him.
Oh, yeah, plenty of Hall of Famers. I mean, Bob Cousy, you got Casey Jones, played with John Havlicek at the end of his career.
Hmm.
You just plenty of, and like we said, he beat these guys consistently. He beat Oscar Robertson, he beat Jerry
Hmm.
West, he beat Elgin Baylor, he beat Wilt Chamberlain more often than not. Um, and that's the legacy, right? It's his legacy. It's Red Auerbach's legacy, obviously. But the fact that he did both, and he had coaching tenures as well, playing with or he coached the Sonics from 1973 to 77, and he coached the Kings briefly for 2 years in 87 and 88. But I mean, to me, it's the off the court stuff too that just matters as much. I mean, as great as a winner as he is, as much as he means to the association, it is the civil rights work. Like he constantly put himself in a line. I mean, he could have been killed. Like that's is going to some of these states and traveling the way they were. Like this really was a different era. It's a different breed of racism than, I mean, obviously racism still plenty exists today all over the globe, but like that really was a different breed in America, especially in the South back then. Um, so for him to stand tall consistently in the face of that and be the face for it, but never quite want the spotlight. There's the story of him not wanting to be on stage with Martin Luther King for the "I Have a Dream" speech, but he was super involved at all those marches and fighting for a great cause, obviously.
Hmm.
So that matters as much as his basketball does as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of you talk about Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, all those guys that either were at well, like they get asked all the time. It's like, oh, why didn't you speak up? Like Tiger Woods, I think is the one that was. He's like, that's just not me. And I think there's a level of that is if you're not passionate about something like that, then
Yeah.
don't do it because it'll show and then it'll look fake or feel forced and then it won't be as authentic. Whereas you obviously saw with Bill, like he was passionate about it. He wanted to do that. He wanted to be there doing that. So I think it was obviously great for him. So bummer to see that that he passed away, but it's always good to dive into someone's legacy and kind of remember their basketball history in a way.
Well, the fact that he was 88 years old, and was celebrated a ton in his lifetime. I mean, I think at least, especially like you said, for everything that he had to deal with,
Mhm.
all the abuse over the years, and just all the, like I said, outright racism. The fact that he was able to get a little bit of his flowers before he passed, I think that that's huge for everybody. Um, And again, he was 88 years old. That is it is a life well lived for Bill Russell. There's no doubt about it. And you can at least take some solace in that. That kind of gets me to one of the craziest stats that I've ever read, and this blew my mind. It's from Weapon Factory on Twitter. Bill Russell is only the fifth MVP of the NBA to die at this point. The others
Wow.
being Wilt Chamberlain, Moses Malone, Wes Unseld, and Kobe Bryant. And the Kobe point kind of gets to the, we really got to celebrate Bill Russell while he was here. He had that full life. I mean, Kobe, obviously the aberration there being so much younger, but I think it should show everyone too to celebrate the greats that are still here as well. Like Oscar Robertson is still alive. Jerry West is still alive. Bob Cousy is still alive. Bob Pettit is still alive. All these players from back then are still with us today. And I think we should you got to celebrate them while they're here. And, we all are guilty of doing the individual comparisons too much and maybe should just focus more on celebrating and enjoying different eras. They don't always need to be compared.
Just appreciate their greatness for what it was.
But yeah, rest in peace, Bill Russell. No doubt about it. One of the greatest of all time. Welcome everybody to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We are back. Like we said, thank you everyone for the patience and the delay. We are, without further ado, I wanted to have an episode with you guys last week. Just some craziness in my last week of work, but we're here now, and that's all that matters. There will not be another 3-week break, I promise. We are back fully for season 10 and once the season gets going, it'll be for season 10 locked and loaded. I'm Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
Love when my mom turns a joke or a funny video into a life lesson.
Oh wow, that got so wholesome at the end so fast. Whoa, I was not ready for that. I have no idea. Who do we got?
It is our guy Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see where his life lessons are taking place. He still could be one of the, I think he's playing in Utah next year, full disclosure still. I don't think they're moving on from him. I think with the shakeup with Rudy Gobert going, I think that's all they do. I also, again, just think the market's all sorts of all over the place right now. And they could retool quickly. Like, that's what I've always said as well. Like with the way Portland is kind of done with Dame Lillard here, where, they've a little bit reloaded. They're not going to quite be as bad, or they shouldn't be as bad at least as they were last year. That's something we're going to talk about later. Kind of the state of where we're at with the NBA, who we think is the most improved, or who could be the most improved in this upcoming season. We're going to talk a little bit about, where we're at post summer league as well. We're going to talk about DeAndre Ayton. That happened a couple weeks ago as well. What that means for Phoenix, what that means for Indy in lieu of the offer sheet being matched by Phoenix. So we'll dive into that. Of course, who's fallen as well. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep, and we are on YouTube if you feel like joining us for a video version of the podcast. According to the software right now, we're recording it in TikTok form, so it'll be a little different today. So we'll see. But either way, if you want to subscribe, we are looking for subscriber number 47 on the YouTube. Again, just search Driving Dish NBA.
Andre Karolinko, the first one that comes off to mind, AK-47. So that's a good one for sure. Really solid NBA player.
Yeah, well, he might want to change the nickname these days, but
it is a little rough in America right now, and that's what's crazy. It's such a good nickname. It's such a good nickname, but
I feel like there was another kid. I feel like there was another kid that was going by AK-47, and they were talking about changing their nickname.
No, it was the kid at Florida, right? It was the kid at Florida who just committed. He was going by AR-15.
AR-15. That's
stop
it.
That.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to do that anymore. So he got ahead of that. So he's a good kid. There wasn't anything malicious by that at all. So
no.
But yeah, I think a wise decision there as well. But yeah, definitely click subscribe. And you can watch this vertical version of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. And now a word from our sponsors.
So let's start with DeAndre Ayton, the whole situation. It was kind of wild, right? Like he gets an offer from the Pacers, and then the Suns are like, "Yeah, we'll match it. We're good." And then it's like, and then we're here. We are.
I know, it's like it looked irreparable, and at the end of the day, it became reparable, and I mean,
I
that's
guess.
Phoenix said it I guess it matches with what Phoenix said all along, is that Phoenix said, "Look, if somebody makes an offer sheet, we're gonna match it. Like, we're
But at
not
the
letting
end
him
of the
go."
right. But at the end of the day, it's still cheaper than what they could have given him, right? So, like, as a player, aren't you still a little bit upset about that?
I think you're a little upset about it, but I also think for DeAndre Ayton now, and he talked about this a little bit
Yeah.
afterwards. It's like, yo, you got your first payday, your first big payday. He's got 4 years, $133 million. You have now provided generational wealth for your family. Like, that's especially for the young guys. Like, they don't have that until you get that first big one, that one that really, really sets you up. So I can understand DeAndre Ayton wanting to get that dealt with, and it was a lingering concern for Phoenix all last season. That was the risk they took. And we talked about it going last year, where it was like you locked Mikal Bridges up. You obviously have Chris Paul locked in. Devin Booker's got his big contract. Well, he got his big extension as well this offseason. But you had Booker locked in on a big deal. You went out and got Landry Shamet, and it was just kind of that where it was awkward for DeAndre Ayton all year,
Mhm.
who's he was going to get that contract no matter what. But in a way, it did kind of feel like prove it for Phoenix. And I think maybe it's hard to say it's a distraction, or I think it's easier, I guess I should say, in hindsight. Because on one hand, you're like, well, they won 64 games. It clearly wasn't that much of a distraction if they, had the most wins in the NBA. But
But
there's also, to that token, we saw it come playoff time where it was like it was a messy exit. And I think when you have a messy exit the way they do, where it's a disappointing loss to Dallas, the way they
well,
just got absolutely torched in that game 7, I think that amplifies a lot of what maybe have been going on in the locker room for a little bit of the season.
and
And
we
that I think
saw
now here with Phoenix, because I mean, that's the thing, and that's the reality for me, is you have to match the DeAndre Ayton situation, because if you let Ayton walk, even if it's for a trade, if maybe it would have been different if they got Rudy Gobert back, but if you let Ayton go, you're just objectively not going to be as good next year. And if you're Phoenix and Chris Paul is this old, you're going all in right now.
right. And I would say too, like, from last year perspective, he didn't Aiton have a little bit of a blow up on the court and got benched for a little bit? Like, there was I do
Well, it was in
remember.
that game 7. Yeah,
That's what I
it was the
mean.
infamous in game 7 where he wasn't playing in the fourth quarter at all.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a little bit of that maybe bubbled over from not having a contract and seeing everybody else get it. But like you said, like you're running it back with all the guys again, and I think that's fine. I think if you're the Pacers, you're probably a little bit of pissed. I feel like they moved some things around to potentially make him that offer. So that's, I mean, it is what it is. But I'd be a little frustrated if I were them.
I don't but I don't think it's unexpected. And that's why for Indy, I think they freed a lot of space up, but I don't think anyone there, they took a swing.
They had to have
Phoenix
known it was a
matched.
possibility, right?
Right. He's a
Yeah.
restricted free agent at the end of the day. And like we said, everybody from James Jones from the GM perspective and Monty Williams, even in lieu of the blow up, both said all off season that they wanted DeAndre Ayton back in the fold, that he gave them the best chance to win. And so now they got that. And I think it does, in terms of Phoenix, it settles a lot now down. You know that next year you're going to have a legitimate chance to win a title. And that's really all you can ask for at this point. Where I think if they had let Ayton walk, that they wouldn't. It just point blank
Yeah.
period. I think Golden State would have been better. I think if Denver's health is better, they could be better. I think there are a couple teams maybe you could argue on that front.
Memphis?
In terms of Indy, I guess really it's just like the big question is, what do they do with Miles Turner, right? Because if you sign DeAndre Ayton, you got to get a Miles Turner deal done here sooner than later. Now, I mean, clearly that I think the relationship is irreparable at this point. I think Miles
All right.
Turner's also been in the trade, rumors now for 3 seasons. I think he'll show up and play. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's
Right.
that bad of a situation, but like I do still expect Miles Turner to be dealt here at some point. It is kind of an interesting rebuild for Indy because they have a bunch of good young players, namely Tyrese Halliburton. Um, but Miles Turner is somebody that still kind of fits the
And
timeline
Ayton,
weirdly. Like, I wouldn't
yeah,
necessarily just rush to move on from Miles Turner, especially once they move Sabonis. Like, I understood when they had both of them,
you
and
had to
I
move
understand
somebody.
maybe wanting to go even younger, but it's like Miles Turner's not that old.
Well, and it's I feel like everybody's kind of just holding and waiting. It feels like there's a few name free agents that could move, but I think everyone's just waiting to see if there is something done with like KD and stuff like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's just one of those kind of like, all right, let's wait it out and see what happens. And worst case scenario, we just go into the season with our guys again. Like I don't think
And
I
it's
don't think
interesting because I don't know because I do agree to an extent because obviously you've got namely Kevin Durant still just kind of in lieu right now.
Right.
You've got Donovan Mitchell, I would argue, is quite close to that caliber of maybe if Utah were to decide to move him. I don't think again, I don't think Utah is moving Donovan Mitchell. The
If you're
only other one that I could
Utah and you're gonna move Mitchell, you probably should have done it when you moved Gobert. Like do it earlier
yes and
in the
no.
summertime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could wait till teams get more desperate and maybe the
I
haul
guess.
increases. Because that's the
I
thing as well,
guess.
is I think with Kevin Durant out there, I think there are teams to make a huge swing like that, or they're going to hesitate on making a huge swing like that because you don't want to, the Gobert deal, to put it bluntly, put the market all over the place. And I think
Right.
now because Brooklyn's fee is going to be so astronomical for Kevin Durant, that I think they are going to pull back a little bit. For Donovan Mitchell, I think there are some teams, namely the Knicks, who believe they can have him in free agency at some point. Again, I think there are teams waiting. I think there are a couple of minor deals. Like again, we'll see what the Sixers do with Tobias Harris. Like I think maybe he gets moved. I think he gets moved at some point. The question is it in the middle of the season? Is it before? Um, but I do. I think teams are starting to settle in because I don't think Kevin Durant's going to get moved. I guess that's what it all comes down to. Is I think the Gobert deal really just it made Brooklyn's what they're asking for, especially because he's under contract, astronomical. It'd
But
be
it's not
different
even
if he
I
was a
wouldn't even
1 year
say
rental like Kyrie.
and
But
I wouldn't even say it's Brooklyn's fault. You know what I mean? Like Brooklyn
no, it's not
has to
Brooklyn's
ask
fault at
for that
all.
much. It's the look of it. If you get less than what they got for Gobert, then everyone's gonna be like, "Yo, what the hell, man?" You know?
Well, it's like, why
So
would you trade Kevin Durant? And I
right.
think that they kind of showed that, when Kyrie opted in, when KD realizes he's not going to move, why not run it back one more time? You have a chance to win a title. Like that's what it all comes down to. Is it's like you brought a lot of your role players back. At that point, go for it. Take the
Yeah.
swing. You'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe Ben Simmons actually provides you with something like this year. Like they're going to be in a good situation. Indy's obviously still here rebuilding a little bit, but for Phoenix as well. Like I think Phoenix now with Ayton, you could argue. I mean, this is a team that won 64 games. I know it was messy last year, but I think removing that distraction will go a long way as well. Ayton's numbers were good last year. I mean, they were better. They were the year that he went to the finals. His points were up 3 a game. His rebounds were about the same at 10. His assists were about the same at 1.5. But I'm pulling up the advanced numbers real quick. Yeah, his VORP was higher than ever. His overall box plus minus, especially on the defensive end, was better than ever. His offensive box plus minus was a career high last year. His numbers were there. His effective field goal percentage was really high. So, DeAndre Ayton earned that contract to an extent. Now, the question is overall in a greater context is where do you rank DeAndre Ayton on that center scale? I don't think Ayton is nearly in the tier that Jokic and Embiid are. At that point, I think there are probably a couple others I would take over Ayton as well. I think I would take Towns for sure. I think I would take Gobert. I think I would take Anthony Davis, assuming health. That's a huge if right now.
Okay.
But the point is, in the context of Phoenix, he is worth that money. Like sometimes context matters as well. When you made the trade for Chris Paul and you're actively trying to win a championship, like, yes, you need DeAndre Ayton there.
Well, that's why I'm trying to see if there's anybody else on that list. I'm trying to see where he lands. Okay, so DeAndre Ayton on a list of this is just for points. But even so, points, he's top 15 in the league, but apparently Kristaps Porzingis had more points than him. Sabonis, like you were saying, Jaren Jackson, Vooch, Julius Randle, Valanciunas too. Actually, I think Valanciunas, by the way, just kind of a side comment. I think he had a sneaky year for us last year,
Oh, he was
where
amazing
yeah,
last year.
but that's why. But nobody talked about it as much because of all the
Well, because he
distraction with
was
the
good the whole
Pelicans.
year, and I think that's the thing is like because the first year he was great in the first half of the year for New
Yeah,
Orleans, but they stunk, so no one
yeah,
was really watching. And then when they started winning, Valanciunas just kept it up, but everyone was focused on all the young guys that broke out on CJ McCollum's arrival, obviously.
yep.
And so, yeah, I do think in that sense it went under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, so maybe a low key pickup for anybody in fantasy basketball. I'll just put that one out there. I
Should be
don't
a
think.
high key pickup at this point after last season.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So I don't know, man. It's just one of those things, like the weirdness of it all, and it just feels like if you were going to keep DeAndre Ayton on the Suns, why go through the theatrics of letting another team make the offer and you matching the offer? Why not
Oh,
show the guy
Just
you
I
love him?
agree.
Right?
I
Like, why not
completely
show him you
agree.
love him and give him his money and get it done before it even gets crazy, or do it last year, you know?
I thought they should have done it last year. I thought they should have locked him and Bridges up at the same time. Like, look,
Yeah.
they got to the same point at the end of the way. Like, you could get to the end
Well, I
destination by
guess
multiple routes, but I agree. It was definitely more dramatic than it needed to be.
they saved
Um,
themselves somewhere around like 50 million bucks. I mean, I think so it was a 4-year, $133 million max offer
yep.
where the Suns could have given him a 5-year, 179.6. So like that's where I keep getting hung up is like as Aiton, I'm like, all right, you guys like me enough to keep me around, but not enough to give me that extra payday here. And that's where I'm like, I would feel salty about that.
I would feel salty about it a little bit too, but I also do think it's that balance of where it's like, look, you're going to get
Yeah,
$133 million. They clearly want you as part of their what they believe to be a winning squad, a winning culture. That does matter a little bit. Like
I
DeAndre
agree.
Ayton is young. Once you have the first big contract locked down, he should, well, I guess I shouldn't say that because guys who look like they're in line for a big contract all of a sudden aren't. But I do think DeAndre Ayton's value isn't going anywhere. Like there are plenty of teams who inquired about trading for him. How good is he in relative to those max centers is definitely up for debate. But I think this is the correct move for Phoenix, and I think again
Well,
should have been
and
done last year.
And I guess according to this, with his new contracts, the Suns can't trade him if they're going to until January 15th. And he also owns a no trade clause for a year. So that could
And
come
I
into
don't get
play.
who they would swap him for. Like that's the thing is
Yeah.
there's not really. I mean, if you want to put Miles Turner in there, sure, but I don't know that Miles Turner is as good as Aiton at this point. So it's kind of a push almost. Like to me, it was more of an aberration. Like I guess that is how I'm treating that loss to Dallas. Like I'm concerned, but if my concern comes, it's going to be on the Chris Paul front. You know what I mean? Like I'm worried about him looking older than I would be worried about DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I also think the depth in theory shouldn't miss every 3-pointer again as well. But it definitely a super concerning game 7 loss. Like I'm still a little like rattled by that. I kind of can't believe it, but either way, it's the right move for Phoenix. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. So Justin, I'll start with you this week. Who is balling?
Okay. Balling for me is Points Bet came out with a graph, a little infographic, if you will. And it is the top 10 most valuable US sports franchises.
Uh huh.
Do you want to guess how many in the top 10 are NBA teams?
Oh, in the U.S.
Yes, just US.
Oh my God, I was going to say 0. Is it 0?
Nope. There
Okay,
are
that
more than
was good. It's
0.
better than 0, but I was gonna say because
It's
the NFL rules in America. Like that's the thing is where it's like I just wondered if those NFL numbers
so
would be super inflated.
there are 4 NFL teams. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 MLB teams.
And so 2 NBA teams.
Wait. My math is off.
No, you said 4 and 4, and then there's 2,
Right,
right?
right, right. Sorry. Wait, 3, 1, 2. There's 3. Okay, I'll start giving them to you. Number
Well, I
1.
mean, can I get my guesses for the
Oh yeah,
NBA? I
okay.
mean,
Guess
my
there's
guesses for the NBA are the Warriors and the Lakers and the Knicks.
and you would be 100% correct.
All right, nice. I mean, it makes sense. Like
Yeah.
Lakers heritage win all the time in Los Angeles. The Warriors have
Mhm.
all that tech money up in San Francisco, and the Knicks are the Knicks. They play in New York.
Yep. And so the highest, do you want to take a guess out of the highest of those 3?
Oh man, I would have said Knicks, but I think it's probably the Warriors now.
It's still the Knicks.
It is still the Knicks. Wow, okay. And that's what's crazy about why they don't win. It makes
Right.
no sense.
They have the Warriors by 0.1 billion.
Wow. Well, I mean, okay, yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's a hefty amount of money.
Yeah.
Um,
But they're so okay. So the top 5, like if we were to go, number 1's Dallas Cowboys, which we can
yeah,
both
that makes
groan and
sense.
hate,
Yeah, that's
and
that's a no-brainer.
yep. Number 2, New York Yankees.
That's
Those are
yeah,
the
that also
those
makes
are
sense.
the only 2 on this list that are over 7 billion.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next are 2 NBA teams, which are the Knicks and the Warriors at
Okay. But the Warriors
6.12.
jumped the Lakers. That's notable, I feel
Yes.
like.
Yes. And so Knicks are 2, Warriors are 4. After that, you go 3 NFL, Rams, Patriots, Giants. And then at 8, you have the Lakers. After the Lakers, you have the San Francisco 49ers. And then at number 10, the Boston Red Sox.
I did not expect the Niners to be that high. I really didn't. And it makes sense. Like, I completely
Yeah.
understand why they are. I don't know why I did. I figured Green Bay might be there or something, like smaller market, obviously, but a team that has a really defined legacy of winning.
Do you want to
Um,
see? Oh, so they have their full list here. Hold on. I'm trying to see. Green Bay is 14th, technically, on this list. I'm trying to, I want to see who's the very last. Is this just NFL? Oh, this is just NFL. I can't do, I was kind of hoping they would combine them. This is just all NFL. Dang it. Well, the worst valued team, which is kind of actually surprising in the NFL right now at 32 is the Bengals.
wow. Wait, really?
That's what it said.
Wow, the cold world. I feel like that's going to change quickly the year after they just go to the Super Bowl. That's
You would think
crazy.
they're worth
Um,
2.84 billion compared to the Dallas Cowboys, who are worth 7.64 billion.
all right, well, we'll start pooling our money together. We can start going in on the Bengals.
Should we start
We
a
can all chip in
GoFundMe?
there a
A
little bit.
GoFundMe?
Yeah, GoFundMe to buy the Cincinnati Bengals. You ever want to live in Ohio? Who'd have thunk us? Not us.
Well, what I would love to do is, oh, here we go, valuations. I would love to see the freaking NBA one and see where the bottom NBA team ranks compared to the bottom NFL team. I'm trying to see. Hold on, maybe this one has it for me, but I don't think I don't think they have an infographic on here, so I don't think I'm gonna find it quick enough. Yeah, there's no infographic. I'd have to read, and that's just not gonna happen tonight.
You're just not gonna read it all, huh?
It'd be so much while trying to also talk NBA. I would just be distracted, and it's for the quality of the episode. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, something like that.
So what's your
All
balling?
right. Balling for me this week is DeMar DeRozan, 4-year deal extension with Nike. But more importantly, he's going to be the face of Kobe Bryant's line. Obviously, Kobe Bryant, LA legend, DeMar DeRozan, an LA guy, so that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, DeMar DeRozan getting a deal done the off season. Obviously, fresh off the All NBA team, great season with the Bulls, and getting rewarded here a little bit.
And, like we said, we're going to talk about most improved teams in a little bit. I feel like the Bulls have a decent case to be improved next year because they were on path to be amazing, and injuries just totally derailed them.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a sec because I'm more mixed on that. I feel like, but I understand what you're talking about.
I wouldn't say right. Like, so most improved implies they're going to like make a huge leap in terms of wins or something like that. I don't think that'll be the case, but I think they'll be more competitive, which I think is a huge improvement if they can all stay healthy and get that chemistry going still.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
All right, who's falling for you this week?
So falling for me is Colin Sexton. A lot of rumors going around with them right now that apparently in the organization they prefer LeVert over him because of the defensive ability. Apparently Colin Sexton also wanted something north of $20 million coming into this offseason. So rumors are now swirling that the Wizards and the Jazz are two teams that have kind of been, it's Shark Week or was Shark Week, circling in the water a little bit to see if there's any availability. So we'll see if it goes anywhere. Colin Sexton, probably one of the ones that got hurt the most, not necessarily a pun intended, from his injury, because people kind of forget how well he was playing.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is you wondered if he would be the victim of Cleveland's breakout, and he was the first guy of this young core that really got onto the scene. And it looked like he and Darius Garland could play well together. And so that's kind of the thing is I don't think Cleveland has to trade anybody necessarily.
But but like Colin Sexton's come out and he says he sees himself as a starter. So if you are going with Caris LeVert, or there's a situation where he has to come off the bench, like maybe things start getting toxic, And if you see that on the horizon, maybe you do have to move on from him, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough now because again, they have a lot of bodies in the room. They had a lot of success there last year, so you don't really want to tinker with it. And
Right.
unfortunately, like you said, it came at the expense of Colin Sexton because he was playing well at the beginning of the year. But then when everybody clicks the way they did, you do wonder a little bit. So I think those rumors are going to swirl for sure. He's another guy who I think is going to have a ton of value here. And so it'll be interesting to see if Cleveland moves, who they get him for, or what they get in return. But there are a lot of teams who will come knocking if he is available.
Yeah.
All right, fallen for me this week is the NBA's tampering rules because they just are dumb. And they get like, I have it sounds so simplistic, but it just is ridiculous that the NBA, who they selectively enforce it for. I mean, the latest one is the Knicks with Jalen Brunson, which clearly the Knicks were tampering with Jalen Brunson. I think everybody on earth knows the Knicks are tampering with Jalen Brunson. The Sixers are potentially at talks here with the No House and with the PJ Tucker situation, with them being both brought in, and they're wondering if there were any conversations because that was before Harden got, before Harden got re-signed officially. I mean, like everybody does this. As soon as it hits the clock strikes midnight, or I mean, I know it's not really at midnight for free agency, but as soon as it happens, Shams and Woj start bombing away. Everybody knows where these guys are going. It's already lined up to the point where it's open secrets. So if it's an open secret, why are we like, what are we
Right.
doing unless it's actively blatant? Like, it has to be really, really over the line and disgusting for me to get bothered by it, I guess, at this point, because I think every team in the league does this. So why be selective about when you enforce it? The Knicks certainly flew too close to the sun with Jalen Brunson. I will say that. Like, the Knicks really just didn't even remotely try to hide it. But
But
it's
see, I
kind of
don't
like, what are
even
we talking about?
but
It's all
see,
under
like,
the book anyway.
I don't even care, like, tamper away. You know,
Yeah,
like,
I don't,
it's
because it already
sure.
happens anyway. These guys
The
tamper within
right.
themselves when they hang out at every camp during the summer.
Right, like, there is 0 part of me that gets upset. There's no point where if God forbid, freaking Tyrese Maxey goes to another team or something like that, and it's blatantly obvious that he or they have been talking to him before they were allowed to. There's no point where I'm like, "Oh, tampering, we gotta get rid of that." It's like, no, if the dude wants to go there, he doesn't have to talk to the team. He can talk to the players, and it's gonna happen regardless. Like, it's just it seems pointless to enforce something like that, that just you can't. How are you going to monitor it in every single aspect of the way? You can't. So just allow it, and we just suck it up, you know?
Well, in case of it's just unrestricted free agency too. That's
Yeah.
the thing, is like with restricted, the teams still have chances. It's like you can tamper all
Right.
you want. Sometimes it doesn't
Right.
matter. Like,
Right.
the Lakers. You don't think the Lakers were tampering with Paul George a few years ago when he was up? Like, I always use that as the main example, but it's like everybody's going to one team until they're not going to one team.
Right. Or was it, I bet if we went back in the, what was it, the Chris Paul, that they were trying to get Chris Paul to LA, like I'm sure there was, you can go back and find any trade, big trade, and I'm sure there was some sort of tampering that you could probably claim.
Yeah, no, 100%, without a doubt, and that's why I just think it's dumb for the NBA to enforce this. Like,
Yeah.
call me if it's happening in the middle of the season.
And even then I don't care.
I don't. I
Even
really
then
don't.
I
I
don't.
could care less. Just put it.
Right.
It's all out there anyway. It's like the name,
Right.
image, and likeness rules with D1. It's like it's already happening. Who cares?
Right. Like it's gonna be what it is, and we'll just have to suck it up. You know, it's part of the game.
Yeah. All right. So we haven't been back obviously in a couple weeks. Summer league wrapped up a little bit ago, and so we were tuned into that. But like largely free agency, which we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, is done, or is at least on hold until somebody decides what Kevin Durant's going to do. Again, said it earlier. I think Kevin Durant will be playing in Brooklyn. Um, but we do want to kind of take an overview of the league quick. Who we think is going to rise, who we think is going to fall. Not to continue the stock market trend necessarily here. But when you talk about last year, you mentioned the Bulls a little bit earlier. In terms of the East, I guess we'll start there. I don't think, I mean, the order for sure can be bunched up, but I think in terms of the top, I'm not expecting too many changes. Like, Miami should be there, Boston should be there, Milwaukee should be there, Philly should be there. I think Brooklyn should be there as well if Durant, assuming he and Kyrie are back in there. I think Toronto is always going to be around. I think they were onto something last year. Chicago, just, I mean, My point where I would maybe disagree with you with Chicago is it's just like Lonzo Ball is such a wild card right now
Yeah.
that I do wonder about that. I think having Caruso back will, of course, help. I've liked their draft picks largely. So I think they'll continue to be as good as they were last year. I guess that's my point.
So
But I think a lot of it depends on Lonzo.
let me ask you this. Last year it was Brooklyn, Atlanta, Cleveland, and Charlotte for the play-in tournament.
Yes.
Who are the 4 teams that will be in the play-in tournament next year?
I don't think it'll be Brooklyn. I'll tell you that. Assuming everybody is healthy.
Sure.
I again, but it's kind of to that point because you're right. Is it's like who do you take out of it? My initial reaction would be Chicago, and so
Probably
I dropped
Chicago.
Chicago out of it, or maybe Toronto, I guess. So
I
you
see. I
drop
think
those two.
Toronto's going to be up there still.
Yeah, because I mean, I think Atlanta will still be hanging around. They got better, obviously, with DeJounte Murray. I think they could be, I think they'll be out of the play-in. I think they should improve here largely. Cleveland, again, as long as you believe in the improvement, which I do, I think should be better. I mean, Charlotte would be the wild card, I guess. I could see them dropping out of play-in. And at that point, it's who do they replace it? Maybe it's the Knicks. I think the Knicks kind of just get better than they were
Yeah.
last year. I think they're a little bit better. Just bringing Brunson in, adding to that lineup, bringing Mitchell Robinson back. I could see Randall rounding a little bit back into form there as well. I mean, the other one is Orlando. I could see Orlando rising pretty quick if Paolo pans out. Like if Banchero looks as good as he did in summer
Detroit
league.
too.
Yeah, Detroit as well is another one. I
So,
mean,
but
both of
here's
those
the
two teams with
problem.
adding their top end talent, like because I
Here,
do think Jaden Ivey makes an instant impact as
but
well.
here's the thing: is so Charlotte at 10, which was the lowest, play-in tournament record at 43 wins. Detroit and Orlando essentially would have to add 20 wins to that to get to that point.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a lot of wins to add. And I understand maybe everything levels out and some wins come from other areas. So maybe it kind of gets a little closer. But I have a hard time giving 20 more wins to the Pistons or Orlando. I have a hard time even giving them 15 more wins and trying to distribute the other 5 somewhere else to
I
kind of even
I
it.
see. I'm giving them 15 each. I really do. I'm giving Orlando and Detroit 15
Okay.
more wins each. There's going to be growing pains, but like,
Yeah.
I think they're both ready to fly. Like we saw it with Detroit. Like both of them were competitive at the end of last year. I think I mean, Orlando in the case, they were just missing that one top end
Yeah.
guy. I think Paolo can be that. He certainly has looked like it in summer league and in the off season so far. You added to Franz Wagner and Cole Anthony and Wendell Carter and all these other guys that kind of broke out last year. Markelle Fultz, like they had the habits there. Detroit, I think, is the same way, and I mean that's also me being super bullish on Cade Cunningham still.
Yeah.
But it's like I love what Cade Cunningham's done. I love Saddiq Bey. I love the Jaden Ivey pick. Like I can start to see them winning some games. Maybe 20, like you said, is a little optimistic, but I could see both of those
Well,
teams being the quote unquote Cleveland of last year in the sense as well that I think they're going to surprise people. Like I don't think Cleveland is now going to have a target on their back. Like some of these other teams will have that. Orlando and Detroit don't have targets on their back just yet.
right. But I see. So if we're giving 20 more wins to Detroit and Orlando, that's 40 wins we have to take from somewhere else, and that's the problem I have. I'm down taking away some wins from potentially the Pacers, and then after that, I feel like all the other teams also got a little bit better. So that's why I think it's just going to be a thinning out of from top to bottom. Like it'll get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But even then, I have like that's why I just think statistically there won't be enough wins to go around, and that's usually how this works out. That they'll improve, and I hope they get to the play-in tournament. Like I hope we get to a point where so San Antonio got in the West at 34. You can talk me into 34 more than you could talk me into like a 43.
That's fair. It is. And that's fair because I do think the East is going to be really competitive. Now, granted, I do think the West will be a lot better next year. I mean, you look just off standings. Phoenix bringing Ayton back. We've talked plenty about them, but they're going to be in the mix. Memphis, I do think is a candidate to drop, and that's just because they're not going to have Jaren Jackson for a large portion. I mean, they're probably going to miss 4 months of Jaren Jackson.
Yeah.
Like that matters. So I don't. Again, they'll be fine once they're in the playoffs and healthy. But I do think off rip that'll maybe knock them down a couple of wins. Like I'd see them losing it there. The Warriors are obviously the defending champs. We don't need to talk about them.
Yep.
Dallas, I think, will be fine. Even with Jalen Brunson departing, I like a lot of their other moves this offseason. I think they'll be right back in the mix. Utah drops heavy. I mean, that goes without saying. Utah, big drop. Denver is the big riser for me. If they're healthy, again, big if, but like Jamal Murray, I think at the minimum will be back. And that'll be a big lift to them. I was going to say, offseason moves.
I was going to say my biggest mover, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I think my biggest mover could be the Clippers.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's a no-brainer of assuming Kawhi is back. And I mean, that's the easy pick to maybe win the conference. I think a lot of people are going to be bullish on that. The Clippers will be up. The Nuggets will be up. I think Minnesota with Gobert will be up. New Orleans depends on Zion, but I think there still should be in play-in position regardless.
Yeah.
San Antonio without Murray, I think drops. They'll
drop. They're tanking.
Pick.
There's no doubt they're tanking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they're out. The Kings are interesting because I do like Keegan Murray a lot, and they have some more win now guys, but they'll be hanging around play-in position. We'll see if they can get over the hump there. I do think Portland retooled a little bit more around Dame. They should be better. The Lakers, I think they're about, if Anthony Davis, so in a sense, they'll get better because I do think if Anthony Davis is healthy, they will genuinely be better than they were last year.
And
but
Westbrook
I think the Lakers are also
with,
stuck.
Westbrook just signed with a new agent, so maybe that's something.
Yeah, that is something. OKC and Houston are still going to be younger. They're kind of dealing with growing pains. Like I think they're both of those franchises are headed in the right direction. I just think, I don't see them making the big jumps just yet.
I like this. So I think I know where you're going to go with this, but out of the Detroit Pistons, the Orlando Magic, Oklahoma City Thunder, and Houston Rockets, who has the best record next year?
Okay. Wow.
I think the easy plug would to be go with the Eastern Conference teams, one of the two. I think that you're more likely to be correct, but I feel like the potential for
the old hometown bias.
I mean, you could go old, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like there might be more wins available in the West.
Yes.
If teams like San Antonio, maybe the Jazz are coming down. The Lakers, maybe they're really imploding again, and it's just an absolute dumpster fire there. Like, I feel like there's potential for more wins to come to a bad team.
Yeah.
So you could justify OKC or Houston potentially.
You can justify them that way, but I'm also at a point where it's like, Houston won 20 and OKC won 24 in a significantly worse conference last year.
Yeah.
Detroit won 23, Orlando won 22. Both of them were playing great at the end of the year. And they both got significantly better in the offseason just by addition.
Yeah.
I know Detroit did lose Jeremy Grant. Like that matters a bit as well.
And getting healthy though is worth mentioning that like you were saying with Grant and Orlando, the guys are healthy potentially, and so that should help some things as well.
Well, if Jonathan Isaac comes back, then that's an easy pick for Orlando. That's the other thing.
I just slipped my mind. Christian Wood left the Rockets, so that could be something that
he's in Dallas. I think I'm going Detroit, and that's more because I'm highest on Cade out of everybody. I could see Orlando though, man. I'm telling you, like Orlando really could win 30, 35 games next year and kind of be around that play-in position. Like I'm really high on that core. I think they started to put it together. I think Paulo is exactly what they needed. And then at that point too, again, assuming Isaac gives you anything, and I'm not factoring him in, but even without him, I think they're going to be right there as well.
Okay. So you're saying Pistons and then potentially Orlando?
Yeah, OKC is going to have more of Gilgeous-Alexander. We'll see how much of an instant impact Chet makes. I guess that's the big question. I do like Josh Giddey. Obviously, I like Lou Dort, who got a contract this past year.
They're so young.
We'll see what Poku can do as well. So that's and I like what Houston has too. I love Jabari Smith. Like he was probably number one on my board. We'll see what happens there, but that was a good pickup for them at 3. Şengün was really solid last year. Obviously, we saw Jalen Green the last really 2 months specifically, kind of settle down a little bit and get more into his own. So, I think both of them are onto something. Like, let me be as clear. Those four in particular, I am higher on than some teams that I think may have more wins than them next year. Truly. I think the direction, like, for example, in the East, like, I like their direction way more than I like Washington and Indies right now. Like,
Yeah.
Indies could be like more of a tanking move, but
Yeah.
it's a little more murky. But like with Washington's direction, I hate Washington's direction. I have no idea what they're doing.
Well, they might go get Colin Sexton.
I know that actually would make sense though. See that's
Yeah,
the one that I think they should take a swing on when you have Bradley Beal. Like that's the type of move where I'm like, okay, Washington, I understand
let's
what the
do it.
deal is there. We'll see how much better that would make them, but that's a team where at least it would make sense. I just think they're kind of sitting in this limbo with Brad Beal right now. And Brad Beal, I mean, good for him. He got a ton of money. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. We'll see what happens with Charlotte as well. Charlotte's the other wild card to me. I could see them dropping, like we didn't even talk about it, but it's like Miles Bridges is the other wild card too, man. That's just the reality. Is it's like I don't expect to see Miles Bridges playing NBA basketball anytime soon, nor should he.
Yeah.
So I think they're a prime drop candidate in the East as well.
Yeah, that had totally slipped my mind.
I think in the East, my non-play-in teams, so my top 6 in some order are going to be Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Brooklyn, and Atlanta. And then my top 6 in the West are going to be Phoenix, Golden State, Dallas, Denver, the Clippers, and Minnesota in some order. Those are my out of play-in games, like just firmly in the playoff positions.
I personally think you're sleeping on Toronto a little bit.
No, I very well could be, and I like the way they play together. And I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if they get in there. Obviously, I know you're a little higher on Chicago than I am, but they're going to be right there in the mix. Like the East remains tough. Like it's going to continue to get better. And I guess I just struggle to see Brooklyn being that much of a dumpster fire again. Now I say that in lieu of Kevin Durant asking out.
But
so
yeah,
who knows? But I mean, if him and Kyrie just kind of have that, hey, let's go for it, one more ride type year, then they do have a chance as long as they figure it out and actually buy in for a year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I think one team that might surprise everybody and make a big leap, in my opinion, might be the Portland Trailblazers just because Dame's back.
Yep.
And they're pretty low on there. Other than that, I think like you were saying, for the most part, the teams that were in the play-in tournament and the playoffs stay. I do like the idea of trying to push the Knicks into the play-in tournament and maybe pull out the Hornets. And then instead of it being, Hornets, Wizards, Pacers, Detroit Pistons, Orlando, I like you would like to put Detroit and Orlando closer to the play-in. I hope they can get there. It's just a lot of wins to be
I
giving
think one
up.
of them would sneak. Like I think the top 10, I think Toronto and Chicago will be top 10. I think Cleveland is there again. I think the Knicks bump in. And then at that point, I think Detroit and Orlando, maybe they contend for it if Charlotte does it. Like Charlotte should be right there as well, too. Like I'm not suggesting they're not going to be around it, but I do think that Bridges news really does it. It throws a lot of their offseason into question now.
Well, they were,
I think the drastic coaching hire change too. I think with that falling apart, we'll see if that has any impact. But in terms of the West, I guess the ones that'll be out for me are the Spurs for sure. I think the Thunder and the Rockets stay out. Utah's out. So who would I say? Thunder, Rockets, Utah. And that's where it gets tough. Then it's tough. San Antonio. And then that last one is tough because I think the Lakers and the Kings will both be around that play-in position. Like I think they're both fighting for that last spot. And whoever doesn't get in there is the one that's out, obviously.
Well, and the exciting thing is we are only 78 days away from the start of the NBA season.
It's coming up quick. Yeah, 78 days away. It won't be 3 weeks again, like we said, until the next edition of the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Drive Edition NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys, as always. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. And I swear I'll turn my light on next episode. The sun went down on me, and
I was going to say,
I know I'm a floating head right now.
I was thinking, the way this is recording, this is kind of like we'll just let you in on a little production talk that Kevin and I can have. I was thinking the way this is recording, we could easily clip these and put them on TikTok. We could become NBA TikTokers.
You're the TikTok famous one, bro. I'm gonna trust your judgment on that one. You're more in touch with this. I'm the boomer of the podcast. I think we
Boomer.
definitely know you're more hip than me by now. So
I don't know. I don't know, man.
Justin,
You're like in
stop.
the kicks game. You're up on your hip hop culture news. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
So I'm hip because I like hip hop. Got it.
listen, hey, I'm just saying. Like all I can tell you is about Olivia Rodrigo and what the pop stars
Well,
are
right,
doing.
the actual Gen Z people. Like, thank you. You just made my point for me.
All right. Well, maybe we'll start on TikTok. If someone wants to help us with that, you can hit me up. Maybe we'll hire an intern. Just let an intern create a TikTok for us.
Sure,
Be
whatever
like, yo,
works.
you want to do it? Just grab some clips and let it ride. We're not going to stop you. Let's just go crazy.
Yeah, no, seriously, we won't. We will not stop you.
And someone who wants to be I feel like we have to have some control because we can't let them like.
No, we're not letting people randomly clip. But like, if you want to, by all means,
I
go
will
for it. I don't know what
100%
we
let
can
them.
do, but
Yeah, I will
we can.
100% let you do that. But the problem is like if some business stuff is coming our way, we need our emails connected to those accounts.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens on that front. But either way,
Uh,
let us know. Apply in the comments or something.
Yeah, we don't have a TikTok, but you do want to see some video of us. You can head to YouTube, just search Driving Dish NBA. That is where you can find us, and we will be back with another episode in about a week.